Hindsight is 20/20, right? The idea that after you experience something, we can look back on the past and say, we understand more now. It makes more sense now. We have answers to the questions we used to have. That's what we do as Christians when we look back on the prophecies in Isaiah, especially Isaiah chapter 11. It was written hundreds of years before Jesus was born. The prophet had this vision of what the Messiah would do, how with wisdom and knowledge and understanding, he would judge between the righteous and the wicked, and then bring a new order to earth where predators and prey could live at peace with each other, where they wouldn't harm and destroy each other on the holy mountain. Now, if you received one of the devotionals that this church members in this church created, Annalise described her understanding of this passage yesterday in the devotional, and she said, this explains that God's redemptive story is for more than just humanity, but for the entire creation. And I agree with her. So Isaiah's prophecy explains this, what the Messiah would do and how this new order would come to earth. It describes what would happen in the future. And as Christians, we say Isaiah was predicting Jesus' arrival. He's describing Jesus. As we look at Jesus' teachings, we can see that Jesus taught us how this would happen. How would predator and prey ever be able to live at peace with each other? In Luke chapter 6, we are taught that Jesus said, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who abuse you. Now, please do not hear this as advice to accept abuse. We know that domestic violence here in New Jersey is certainly a problem, and this scripture passage is not saying to allow an abuser to continue to hurt you. That is not what Christ was teaching. It says, pray for those who abuse you. You can do that from a distance. So create distance, and please allow yourself to be in a safe position. If that is something that is affecting your life or someone you know. When Jesus said, if someone hits you, let them hit you on the other side of the cheek, that wasn't saying, allow them to continue hurting you. In that culture, it was socially acceptable to hit someone with one side of your hand, but not the other side. If you did it with the other side, it was very disrespectful to yourself. It was demeaning to yourself. So Jesus was essentially saying, go ahead, outwit them. Outwit them. Love your enemies. If we love our enemies, perhaps then the predator and the prey can live at peace with each other. But who are our enemies? Jesus doesn't go into details there. Perhaps if we've been trained in the military, we are told exactly who our enemies are. Or if you play sports, you're told the other team is your opponent that you want to beat. Perhaps your enemy is the person who has a different perspective than you, a different opinion. Our culture says today our enemy is the one who speaks a different language or looks different. So Jesus doesn't define who your enemy is. Jesus says, love them. Whoever it is, love them. I want you to take a moment right now. Some of you, I'm guessing, have sat in these pews for a number of years or been to other churches, and you've worked hard not to have enemies. I commend you. Today, I want you to consider, in order to continue growing in faith, who is the hardest person in your life to love? Because something that's similar in our culture compared to Jesus' culture is that the world tells us, love the people who are good to you. The other ones, not so much, right? Jesus says even sinners do that. Everybody loves the people who love them back. So even if you wouldn't call someone your enemy, who is the person or who are the people who are hard for you to love? I'm not going to ask you today to speak their names, but I do want you to have someone in mind, because a sermon is not just a time for me to blow hot air towards you and you to look at me. The point of this is for us to be more faithful as followers of Jesus Christ. And my hope is that you leave this space with a conviction that we are called to do something different than the rest of the world. The call today is to love those people who are hard for us to love. So if you have someone in mind right now who is hard for you to love, I'd like you to take a moment to listen to Pam, because she's going to explain one teaching about the ways we can love people in our lives.
Okay, hello again, how are you? So, do you ever wonder why you may struggle in a relationship with your partner, or where you have 2 or 3 or 4 children and you get along with one of them and you may really struggle with another, or there's a coworker or a sibling of your own that you just can't get along with? About 6 years ago, my sister recommended a book to me, and it was called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and it was life-changing. Some of you may have read it, some of you may have not. The concept is very simple. There are 5 ways that we each give and receive love. Physical touch, not the adult private type, but physical touch. Gifts, I wasn't sure how I wanted to say that, so I figured that was the safest way. Gifts, acts of service, words of affirmation, and quality time. For me, I learned I am physical touch, and for those of you, and I'm looking at Shannon, I'm a hugger. That's one easy way to say it, I'm a hugger. I love the physical touch. And more so, words of affirmation. So generally, people will have 1 or maybe 2 primary ways of giving and receiving love, or more so receiving love, to where they feel loved. And when you're not feeling love, that's where there's that struggle with the relationships. So for me, I have 3 kids, and I say I love each one of them the same way. Why do I get along with this one and not with that one? They have different love languages. They have different primary ways that they need to be shown love to feel loved. And it's really simple. It's in everything we do every day, and you may hear cues from the people that you love that you are struggling with, or even coworkers or siblings or whatnot. Why can't you? I wish you, those types of cues where they're asking you to show them love in their primary way so that they feel loved. I know that when my sister recommended this book to me, I was going through relationship issues of my own. There are different versions depending on the type of relationship that you have. But for children, it was really eye-opening to understand that my kids have different love languages. I can't just show them love the same exact way. And when you do the opposite, it's like a knife in the heart. So for me, I'm words of affirmation. So when you say, good job, Pam, or, I love you, or whatever, that makes me feel loved. And it's like you open up. So if someone says something bad about me to me, it's a knife in the heart. I get upset, I cry, whatever. So I found that even with my children, they ask some simple things where it's like, I'm too busy to do this. I can't do that right now, I'm too busy. That was the knife in their heart. And I had to stop, and I had to step back and listen to what they were saying, that I need your love. And it's really a life-changing book. The concept is very simple. Give and receive love, right? And again, the 5 different ways: physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time. I'm sure there are many of us where it's like, I wish I had more time with a particular person. Gifts, it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be a note that you leave. It could be a flower that you picked. And acts of service. Could be sewing a shirt that was torn, or fixing a toy, or unloading the dishwasher. And it goes both ways. Your kids can unload the dishwasher, and that's where you'll feel loved as an act of service, primary love language. But I would love to talk more with any of you if you have questions about it. I've recommended this book to many, many people, and they've agreed it's life-changing for them. And I learned probably more about myself than I even did about the other people that I love. So, but thank you.
So how do you apply that to your enemies? You have to pay attention to what their needs are, what they desire, what affects them. Here's an example of enemies loving each other. Perhaps you've seen this video on YouTube where a female soccer team was playing against another, and someone who was Muslim started losing their head wrap. Right? You've seen it, some of you? So what would you do in that situation if you were the other team? Well, these young girls who were her opponents saw what was happening and knew this is a problem. If you're Muslim and you're a woman, you want to be modest. You don't want anyone to see your hair. So they gathered as quick as they could and formed a circle while she bent over and fixed it. As soon as she stood up, they kept the game going, playing on opposite sides. But that's an example of an act of service to care for an enemy or an opponent. You have already thought of who in your mind is hard to love. And you have some examples of how to love them. So during this time of meditation, let us ask for God's guidance, God's power. The reason it's so important is Jesus says, if you love your enemies, you will receive a great reward and you will be called the children of the Most High. This is one of the most important teachings of Jesus. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So let us express love even to our enemies. Amen.